designed to heal. As I've been saying, many, many times, I believe with all my heart we are designed to heal, and I've worked with hundreds of men and women, all ages, who have been in recovery from drugs, alcohol, all kinds of abuse, and have had profound losses in their lives, both financially, physically, familial, partners, and we are designed to heal. And the music that you just heard at the beginning of this video is from Freddie Mercury, who came to Barcelona, where I am now, overlooking Barcelona Harbor. This is my office. And this is the backdrop where we just finished up the America's Cup last week. One of the last performances Freddie Mercury had was actually in Barcelona before the Barcelona Olympics, and that was soon after that he had passed away, and so he came and he was asked to do the main theme song for the Barcelona Olympics, and this song is very, very beautiful. I'm going to have it just the first word of the song. And I remember when he died, because that was 1992, and I had only been coming out maybe a couple of years at that point. And this week we're going to talk about grief, and there's three parts of grief. Things I didn't get growing up, things I lost, or things that were taken away from me, and that's what all of us are in one way or another. These are the kinds of things that we grieve. And I think for me and for my generation, one of the things that we just didn't get to do as a group back in the day, very similar to the COVID pandemic, was as a group, the gay community didn't have a chance to grieve, because all of us were so damaged and crushed by the terribleness of this virus that took 30% of the gay community at that time. And Freddie Mercury was one of the most high profile. And remember, up until the middle 90s, you had Rock Hudson, Liberace, so many people on Broadway, other Hollywood stars, performers, musicians, so many people in the arts, and we all stood by. And of course, that was basically 1992 was almost 10 years in, and there was still no sign on the horizon of any kind of treatment or vaccine, or was a sort of an invitation to death, because it was such a toxic drug to deal with the virus, that it had so many damaging side effects. And so for me, I limped along for a very, very long time with that mourning, the loss of any normalcy in my life in my 20s or 30s, as I was only starting then to come out as gay. And I guess, in that sense, the disease, the pandemic, the virus, right, was so attached, it was so associated with sexual activity, that for the generation that was left, right, only half of us managed to limp into the 2000s of my generation, left such a stigma on the gay community because of the way in which the virus had that effect on sexual activity, and the way that the gay community was ostracized and villainized by that. At that time, I was working in the White House in the middle 80s, and one of my good friends, who was an assistant secretary of the Treasury under Don Regan, he was dying of AIDS in a brutal, awful way. And he finally died. But I remember that Larry Speakes, when he was the spokesperson of the Reagan White House, during one of the press conferences in 1987, you can find it. It's on social media somewhere. They were making jokes in the White House press room about homosexuals and AIDS, and so these were, some people in the briefing room found it objectionable and were groaning, but a lot of people thought it was very funny. And so this is what we were confronting, was being made fun of, and villainization and ostracization, And so that's how I sort of limped into the 2000s. And I didn't get any help. I didn't ask for help. I didn't get any therapy. I didn't really talk to my fellow gay colleagues, because all of us were so damaged. We didn't know how to help each other. And I think I felt so similar during COVID, and it took me a while to figure out why this felt so familiar to me. And it did, because all of us went through COVID together, and there was nobody around sort of who was outside of the COVID virus who could, help, who could offer solace or comfort or hope, or, hey, this is where we're going, this is the vision, this is how we're going to get there. We were all in COVID together, lost. And that is exactly how, the gay community felt in the 90s and the 2000s, until there was, some sort of medication and treatment, which was not really until, I think, the middle 2000s you had something that was approaching a treatment that was not, toxic. And so when we don't know what to say to each other, to solace to each other, are just fisted, and they're not nice, and they're out of the blue, and they're ill thought out. And so I promise you, I had people telling me, when I was trying to come out in the 2000s, because we felt like we had to in order to get, funding for R&D, and this was happening even in the 90s as well. We all decided you had to come out and you had to be public about your sexuality in order to create a public block, a public voting block, in order to get funding to find a cure, some sort of treatment for the virus. But I would tell people I'm gay, and they would say something like, I hope you don't die. I swear people were saying that to me. I hope you don't die. And my HIV status, I'm negative. I'm 100% healthy. I have always taken as much care of my body as I could, given the circumstances. Other people would treat me like I had kind of a cancer in remission. Oh, well, good. I'm glad you're gay, but I don't really want to talk about it. And so let's move on to another topic. It's like I felt like I had cancer, but it was in remission. And that's the way I felt for such a long time when I lived in Asia. It's like talking about having cancer in remission at the dinner table. It's like, okay, great. Well, let's move on. And so I was doing all of this grieving without knowing that I was grieving. And I think that's what a lot of us are doing right now with COVID. And that's why I think we're still not getting close at all to healing as an overall community, because I think we're just not that aware of how much grieving is occurring right in front of our eyes. And as I've been saying with this practice of EMDR, which I've done with people who have recently lost a loved one, a parent, a sibling, or somebody close to them, there needs to be a very clear recognition, a public recognition. This happened to me. My emotions count. What I'm feeling and what I have been feeling are real. This is really important. Sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking, well, maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe I was imagining all of that sense of isolation or depression or anxiety or loneliness or lost friends or lost time, right? And so these are things that were taken away from me, and we have to grieve them, right? I think that grieving for me is something as simple as sitting with our grief, right? To welcome grief as a friend, right? And to have it sit next to you and say, we're going to have to go through this together, and you're going to have to be here for a while until both of us decide you don't have to be around anymore. And some people it takes longer than others. Some people go through it more quickly than others. I think I was at a conference in Berlin, at a drug addiction conference in Berlin last last year, and I was talking to a psychiatrist about this during the lunchtime buffet thing. And we were talking about this, and she asked me, how long do you think, when I think we really broke out of COVID in probably 2022, and this was 2023 last year, and I said, I think it should take sort of four seasons, right? A calendar year tends to be an awfully human period of time where we think about something, and that was my answer. I thought, 4 seasons, summer, spring, winter, and fall, 12 moons, that tends to be when people start to heal from tragic circumstances. And she said, why would you say that? And she was being playful, but also somewhat serious. And I said, what I just said. I thought 4 seasons is an awfully decent, interval for us to be able to heal from a lot of different things. And she says, for something as profound as this, I just think that's wrong. And I said, well, how long do you think this is going to take for us to heal from this? And she said, 10 years? And I was dumbfounded. My jaw nearly fell into my soup. But I think this will take an awful long time for civilizational healing on this, because all 8 billion people on the planet went through this together. Nobody was spared. There's nobody around who didn't go through it, who didn't feel it. And so I had to really reflect on this quite talented, she was one of the main speakers, and she was really great. She was from Mexico City. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to reflect on this and maybe, give it a lot more credit than I think. And so I think we're going to have a long period of grieving here. And, when we don't grieve, when we don't acknowledge our grief, a lot of the natural side effect is depression, a feeling of loneliness, a feeling of isolation. Because grieving is, the opposite of grief is community and belonging. And so I still think we have that alienation from the community still. And I think it's going to take time to rediscover that sense of trust, to rediscover that sense of inclusion, to leave that sense of isolation. And when we feel isolated, we feel trapped. When we feel trapped, we feel rageful. And that's where the rage is coming from in so much of what's happening to us as a civilization. It's the isolation, the sense of feeling trapped. And I believe the essence of anxiety is that sense of feeling trapped. And so acknowledging these things is so much of the way out, and to talk about them, I think, ideally in a group setting. And EMDR, I think, is a great way to do that, because as I've been saying, I've been making the point and pounding the point for quite a bit about just how much EMDR helps in terms of taking away the fear and the anxiety and the not feeling trapped, because I can say, here I am on the map, right? EMDR gives us a map of where we are. And in some ways, it physicalizes, it creates a person, place, and thing in my mind, in my frontal lobe, to say, this happened to me, I was here, these are the things that were taken away from me, these are the things, right, that I lost this, I lost friends, I lost career opportunities. Career opportunities were taken away from me, friends were taken away from me. My best friend, who I used to teach with at Loyola Marymount University, a Jesuit, he died from COVID, about 18 months ago. And he was a dear, one of my dearest friends. He was a Jesuit priest who was a real, true Christian. And that was a lot of grieving I had to go through with him, because he had a long COVID that was awful and terrible and grueling. And he was somebody who was very proudly gay, and who lost so many people during the AIDS crisis. And so I had to go through a lot of grieving about that, and naming, right, this thing. And also, part of grief is celebration too. Part of grief is the celebrating a person's life for the good things that they gave us. Grieving isn't all bad. There has to be a sense of celebration for what's been given to us. And so that's my thinking on this. And EMDR was a great way to understand better, get out of that sense of isolation and feeling trapped. It's a really important element of grief counseling. So that's it for this time. Enjoy the Freddie Mercury Barcelona music. He's I think one of the most gifted musicians of the 20th century. And again, we are designed to heal, I promise you. We don't have to feel trapped, isolated, and alone anymore. We are designed to exit this and to be fully present. Happy day. And if you want a copy of my audiobook on EMDR, please just leave a note below. I'm happy to send you the audiobook. It's created in a PowerPoint structure, so it's very easy to understand. So please do leave a note, and I'll happy to send you a copy of it.